Now, the Insurance Bureau of Canada has said that the industry is changing. So let's talk about that, sir. What are some of the factors that are leading to this change?
So the insurance sector has been ringing the alarm bell about climate change for a long time because the impacts of severe weather have been showing up in their models and hitting their bottom line for decades. There has been a growing understanding of the role that insurers and the broader financial sector can play in terms of pulling forward and smoothing out the transition to a net zero economy. I think Mark Carney played a catalytic role in that regard in terms of identifying the threat of climate change to global financial stability. And since that time, about 6.5, 7 years ago, when he identified that threat as the head of the Bank of England, the insurance sector, the broader financial sector, and central banks around the world have moved very quickly. And in the insurance sector, we've seen more and more companies move toward net zero commitments and plans to meet them.
Now, as you're saying, some global insurers are stopping providing coverage for coal or oil sands projects. What is the current situation in Canada, given our economic makeup?
So, when insurers make net zero commitments and they make plans to meet them and start to execute on those plans, often divestment decisions are the ones that get all the press. But just as important and more common are engagement decisions where as large institutional investors, they'll engage with the companies that they're invested in and work together to drive down emissions. And generally speaking, these divestment and engagement decisions are made on a sector by sector basis, and there'll be different decisions made by different companies, but they're all leading to the same place, which is pulling forward and smoothing out the transition.
And how important is insurance to the natural resource industries in particular?
So, the insurance sector plays an important risk transfer role for the natural resources industry and for all businesses, because generally speaking, individual businesses can't absorb the potential loss impacts that they might be exposed to. So I don't know that it plays a more important role in the natural resources sector than other sectors, but certainly just like you can't drive a car without insurance, you probably shouldn't own a home without insurance. It is a very central role that insurers play when it comes to business.
Now, let's get into extreme weather. We've seen fires across BC. We've even seen tornadoes in Barrie, Ontario. So what are the costs and insurance impacts to these extreme weather events?
So the annual insured losses last year in Canada from severe weather events were $2.4 billion. That's become kind of a normal number. That's become sort of our new number over the last decade. In the 80s and 90s, it was about 6 times less. So obviously, these figures have gone up and up and up. And, we can only imagine where they're headed.
All right, sir, just over a minute left here. But considering all the variables we're discussing here, what is leading to the change in the insurance industry's evaluation of risk, given the increasing global demand for energy?
I think the insurance sector stands alone among sectors in terms of their ability to assess the physical risk of climate change. So like the physical impacts of severe weather on assets or supply chains. It's that assessment of the transition risk and the assessment of the role that the insurance sector can play in terms of smoothing out the transition so that it does not impact, or at least has the least amount of impact on global financial stability as possible. I think that is something that's moved at light speed over the last 6 or 7 years.
All right, Mr. Edger, great having you today on Forum Daily. Thank you again for your time today.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, stay tuned. We take a look at what's making news around the world after the break, as the U.S. Vice President says the focus must be on the evacuation efforts in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, the U.S. FDA has approved the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, and New Zealand extends its lockdown. We'll have these stories and more news from around the world coming up next on Forum Daily. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these short messages from our sponsors.